ladies and gentlemen, to the main event. Welcome everybody to the main event of today's micro-conference. You are really privileged to be here, those of you who have managed to make it. This is a very, very unique time that we're in, and we have a very unique person who's done a lot, been through a lot, and driven the whole way down from Blackpool.
Yeah.
Julie Phelps has only been back in this country in the last few weeks, and it is because of the information she has and what she's been through. I asked her down here to do a basis, and it was basically just get here, somehow we'll work something out. And you're here, I'm here, and Julie's here. So you've got 3 presentations.
Yeah.
And we'll get on with it right away.
Right.
Everybody, a round of applause for ex-RAF Julie Phelps.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for attending today. You know, I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really grateful to everybody who knows, like, Connecting Consciousness, Sam Parks and Becky Parks, because without the Connecting Consciousness team and other people in Canada who have supported me, I wouldn't be here, I'd be dead. Because I've escaped Canada, certain groups in Canada. I wasn't just targeted by one group, I was targeted by 2. So I was targeted by a military group, and I was also targeted by a satanic group that was connected to my husband, who left many years ago, but they never leave you alone. So also, he passed away just over a year ago. He was suicided, but through him and through all the support I've had and deep reflection and working on myself to break free from the mind control, I am now, well, as far as I know, I'm free of the mind control, but you know, I am always looking for extra programs, so I never am 100%, but I do reflect on it. Now, my background is through military. In my work background, I was in the RAF as aircraft mechanic propulsion, aircraft engines. And from there, the day I left there, I joined Marconi as space and military microchips, quality control. So from that, I had a family, and then I went into psychology. So I worked in the field of mental health, and then I moved to Canada later on. But it wasn't until my husband died and I had a suicide program triggered that Simon supported me, and the group supported me, which allowed me to find out how I was mind controlled, what mind control it was. And from there, I've been working on breaking it. So as I move on from that, and it was a Monarch Mind Control. So these are recall now. It took time to recall. How I came about this was because it was Alice in Wonderland program, and I could never ever watch Alice in Wonderland. I would feel very sick if I tried to start watching it. So I never watched it my whole life. But I decided, once I found out I was under mind control and I knew I had an issue with Alice in Wonderland, I thought, I'm going to watch it. But what I'm going to do is use a technique that psychologists use, which is a rewind technique. And this is where you imagine yourself sitting in a chair, looking at yourself, looking at the screen. Now that protects you from like suicide and things like that. It's like one step away, so it doesn't traumatize you in the same way. And so I'm fortunate I've got that background in psychology, so I could utilize that. This picture here, or it's actually a number of pictures joined together. I now recall, and I drew the electric shock machine, which had electrodes that they would connect with like belts and things to various parts of your body. And the table was a metal table, and there was nothing comfortable about it at all. It was a sheer metal table that you see like to one side of the machine used to electric shock. They had a crocodile clip that they'd attach to the table, and that would like earth through there. And then to the left, they had, I show towels on a rack and a bin and things like that. These are all recall. Now, one of the things I recall most of all is the lamp on top, which was like an enamel lamp. So it was like a grey military enamel lamp, and then white enamel on the inside, because you were looking up. So to focus and kind of focus out your mind and detach, when you're going through trauma-based mind control, you detach from your body and you just go out of your body. So that then they put the programs into you when you do that. So it was an underground base, and this is the door I remember. It was a dark grey metal door, very, very thick, soundproofed. There was no sound was going to get through that door. There was no handle on the inside. It was a sort of grey paint you see in battleships. It was a very military type paint. And of course they had clean-up equipment in the place as well. Now, I've decided to come forward with this, which is not easy. But this kind of represents me, and it's how they break you, right? So the person me in the center is about the core self. So they fracture the core self by extreme trauma, which I have described in another video with Miles, which I'm not going to go into today. And so that's why I drew the glass fractured. That is, they split you. You end up just too much for you as a child, and you just withdraw. I remember just seeing black, completely black. I couldn't see anything when they did it. Also, I recall I was a Medusa asset, which means it just means like the snakes on Medusa, you're a multiple asset. So you're not just used in one field, you're used in many fields. And my number was 777, and I still use that today, so that hasn't stopped. And I put at the bottom missing time. So I have a lot of missing time in my life, so I put that clock down there. So if I start from the top left, obviously there's different names. I remember there was 2 different names. Now a lot of people recall or have read about the beta sex slaves. So I recall that, but it's not just that. I also recall in Britain, they would also call you facets. So they'd divide you into gems. So the sex slave was also known as a ruby facet. And then if you go on to the one on the right, that's the blood garnet or emerald facet, but that depending on what you were used for. It was also Delta Black Widow asset, which was espionage, assassinations, things like that, sniper, all sorts of things like that. And remember, you're not aware of this. So what's the best spy? What's the best espionage person who does espionage? Is somebody who does not know they're a spy, With that, it has, you have enhanced psychic ability, but I've always had psychic abilities my entire life, so that's just enhancements by the way they control you. And I was also put into black goo by the Draco too, and that was to help again control me. Now that's been removed. Now, at the bottom is the SSP, and of course they say super soldiers, but you're a super slave, so you're not really a super soldier, you're a super slave. I mean, if you look at the whole picture, you're just a slave at the end of the day. And it's kind of why I'm coming forward. It's about breaking free with humanity, because it's not just Monarch, this is the depth of the worst form of trauma, but everybody goes through trauma on the planet. It's not just me, it doesn't matter what it is. Everybody goes through some form of trauma, whether it's losing a relative or something else, or there's so many different ways. And of course, we've all been programmed from the day we're born, into society, culture, and social control. Because, like I was hearing on the radio the other day, a family had built a log cabin, and it was out of the way, nobody bothered, but they were told they had to remove it. They own the land, they got to remove it, and now they're going to be homeless.
Okay.
Thank you, Miles. Right. I have to get back on track again. Right, if we go back down to the bottom right, again, I did join the military, and I was guided to join the military. I literally had a dream, and like 2 days later, I went down to the recruitment, and they said, yeah, welcome, great. We're just looking for people, and we want somebody in aircraft mechanic propulsion. And I said, well, I was kind of looking at RAF police, maybe or something else. Oh, no, we haven't got any vacancies in there. Just go do the test for aircraft mechanic propulsion, and then we'll see how you go. So I passed them there and there. That day, I passed them. And within 2 weeks, they wanted me in the Air Force. And I said, well, I can't come in because, it's too fast because I haven't got a hairdryer yet, let alone anything else. And people joke about that. True. And they said, well, we'll give you another week then. So it was like 3 weeks I was in the Air Force. So I didn't really have time to think or anything. I was just in. And when I got to basic training, they said, oh, it took us ages. They've got to do the background checks. It takes longer than that. They didn't have the computer system then. Because they go in your history and who's all your relatives. So, so it was pretty obvious. I was already programmed to go, and they'd already provided me with the job, which was aircraft mechanic, and so I joined. And from that, I also know about screening. I was on the base, RAF Cranwell, and I remember being given the task of doing guard duties every flaming 3 weeks. I mean, I was a mechanic, I wasn't aircraft regiment, and for a week, I was given a week's guard duty. Now, I realise now that was a screen memory. And now I remember being taken in the army trucks to a base working on advanced craft, which I haven't done a lecture on yet, but I do have a lot of recall of how to work on them and everything. But I'll have to do that another day because I can't possibly do that today. And also a psychic asset. Now, the psychic asset was the Royal Star Sapphire. That's the facet part. And a psychic asset. But I do recall going to masquerade parties and things like that when I was younger. So I was used in that way as well. But I have got slides about that because there's information from that I remember that's details that people don't talk about. So, now this is not a very nice picture, but it's what I recall when I was being programmed in the Alice in Wonderland program. The Cheshire Cat was beamed in, like a beam coming in, and you knew that was like a signal for torture, whether it's you being tortured or if it's somebody else being tortured, or you having to torture somebody else, or whatever else. So this was like a trigger, and it was very much like this one. It's pretty horrible, but it doesn't look like a nice Cheshire Cat or anything. This was a really horrific way of programming people. And now the secret space program, they're now telling me a lot of people are saying that they're now not using this technique. They're using electronics to mind control people and put them in mind control so they don't have to go through this trauma anymore. This was an old method. And one of the triggers was like nursery rhyme, Ring a Ring of Roses, but it was done in a certain pitch. So it's not just the words, it's a pitch. So certain music will trigger me. And also like music box. You know the old tinny music box that you wind up? There's certain tones and certain keys on that can trigger me as well. And there's other things that can trigger me. And these are all about programs, but it's about breaking these programs. Right, the Queen of Hearts. I remember the Queen of Hearts again from Alice in Wonderland. This was a sign of death. So if the Queen of Hearts came up, then somebody died. That was it, But I won't dwell on that one. Now, the white rabbit. Now, I like the white rabbit because it was a way out. It was a way back to kind of normal life. It was away from the mind control place and everything else. So the white rabbit to me is a very positive symbol. It's escape, you know. Right. Oh, this is a picture I drew. Not that you can draw it very well, but it's the container I saw the black goo that the Draco put me in. Now, it infiltrates your entire body, and then when you're taken out of it, it leaves a residual in your system. Now, it's not just me. I'm finding more and more people have been infected with black goo. It's AI black goo, and it helps control the person. Again, another layer of control. It's like an onion of control systems put in to stop us breaking free. And this was put in by the Draco. Now, the Black Widow facet, Delta asset. As I was saying, that's about espionage. It's about assassination and things like that. And that's me. That was me again. I was an asset in the RAF. This was me dressed up in flying suits. So I went out on the weather ship. So I wasn't a pilot. I was ground crew. But that's, evidence that I was in. Now this, I put this in because this was relevant. It's about a control system on your psychic abilities. It's like a clamp that goes on your psychic abilities. So you're actually restrained from using your full psychic abilities unless they want you to use them in whatever method. So this is H.R. Geiger, and until I had the black goo removed, this was very relevant because I liked H.R. Geiger before I had broke the mind control, and it's very much an AI human hybrid. When you look at H.R. Geiger's work, Alien, that was H.R. Geiger. He was influenced with that, and it's very much a dark element. It's not a positive thing at all. Right, this is what I remember about masquerade parties, and these details don't normally come out. What I remember is this: there was a hierarchy. So, depending on what you did in the masquerade parties, depending on what mask you got. So, I'll start at the bottom. So the slaves were the lowest of the low, and they were expendable. So sometimes they may get rid of them at a party, they may be sacrificed, or they may just be serving everybody. It depends. But they were expendable, and they wore a leather mask. So there was a hierarchy in that. Now, the guards and security, they wore masks too at these masquerade parties, but you could tell who they were because they wore gladiator masks. So like if you remember the movie Gladiator 2, you might have the double face one, or you might have, as you see here, the two gladiatorial masks. So again, a symbol of security. And then at the top, these are the elites, the bloodlines, or the assets. And the women tended to wear gold, and the men tended to wear silver. So it was just the way, not always, but most of the time that's the way it went. And I remember wearing a mask that was, again, a Medusa asset mask. So they kind of knew who you were. They knew, everybody knew everybody else, but even though you were masked up. But that was that. But it's about love, basically. It's about breaking free from all this. And earlier this year, I made a bargain. Well, I made a covenant with higher dimensionals. These were Palladians. And I've made a covenant with them. And I forgave the things that have been done to me. And it's about forgiveness, because it's a way of going up the higher dimensions. Once you forgive, it frees you. It's like a freedom. Because if you carry on the victim perpetrator circle, it just carries on round. So if I'd gone, oh, I hate these so much, I want to kill all these, people who, tortured me and other people, then let's just carry on the circle. I still want it to stop, don't get me wrong, and I will defend myself. And I know how to defend myself because I've been absorbing some of my alters in the way I want to absorb them. So I do remember some of the methods of defense and things with my delta alter. And if you have, this is another thing too, I think they learnt on the way, if you have too many alters, let me go back. If you have too many alters, then it's too much for the psyche, and then you'd end up in a mental health institute because the human capacity can only tolerate so many. But at the top of this picture, which I forgot to say about, is the programs. So like Stuart Swordslow, he was talking about the cube. Now, the cube, that means they can put an awful lot of programs within you. So you have to be aware that you may still have hidden programs, and this is something I'm very aware, but you can fight them. You can fight them with your own will. This is it. And that's what I've been aiming to do, and I've been breaking them down slowly, but I'm always, guarded about that to make sure there's no more. So that's on the trauma.
Just before you answer that question, what's the next PowerPoint?
Go on to the Mars one at the top. You have a sense that you're getting taken over, basically, if you get triggered.
Talk on the mic. Make sure you talk.
Yeah, you have a sense that you're getting taken over, so it's about fighting that, literally fighting that sense of being taken over. So before I broke free, I wouldn't have even been aware. And I'm still not keen on phones. I won't answer a phone unless I really have to. Now, I can do Zoom, I can do other things, but phones, no, because that's one way they can target you too, and how they can trigger you. They'll use codes or they'll use some other method to actually trigger you into an alter. But I've been really fighting this year, and I've had a lot of support as well from Simon and others in like deprogramming. So it's not been something I've been doing on my own. There's been a lot of people involved that have supported me, and I'm really grateful. So yeah, you do get an inkling. Now I get an inkling when something, when I get triggered, it's like, there's some music, like the Satanic Masquerade Requiem. Oh, no, it's Vampire Requiem, that's it, sorry, I forgot the name of it. That one, that's a trigger for me, but that's a trigger for the actual delta asset or facet, because it affects my mind. So I become extremely, it triggers almost like a vampiric sort of trigger that gives me like more increased psychic ability, because what you find is it's not just a case of chatting a guy up in espionage or something like that. It's about infiltrating the mind. So you may go to a man, and I'll admit this, you can do this. It's about infiltrating the mind and sexually stimulating them. You can do that. Now, the black magicians can do it too. So the men can do it to the women, and they'll get whatever woman they want, because they'll infiltrate the mind, and they'll say, oh, you really fancy me. And then they may even be turning the other direction. It won't matter. They'll turn around, and then they'll come to the guy, But the women can do it too. So it's something to be aware of. It's something to be aware of for anybody, men or women, that this can be done. And increasing numbers know this. They've experienced it. But you see, you would say go to a party, something like that, and you had a target, and you're under mind control. Someone wasn't aware of this, but you may have, it may be an MP or something like that, and you infiltrate the mind, psychic connection. You draw them to you. They don't kind of know why they're drawn to you, but they're drawn to you, and then you move on from there. So you can either get information from them, or a sexual liaison, or something like that, and even blackmail. You see, it's used for blackmail too. So, so I think that's why an awful lot of politicians and other people are blackmailed, basically. They're either set up in different ways. They may be set up with children or others. So they're not all guilty of being horrendous people. And it's something else that I realised too, is like the ones who do the horrific things in the underground bases, it's an altar. They're under mind control too. So they do these awful, horrific things that no normal human being would ever even dream of doing. But they do it because they're under mind control as well. So that also allows me to sort of forgive them more as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. More from that, how did you manage to actually break free of that mind control?
Well,
what were the mechanisms involved in you kind of like breaking free from that?
right. Part of this was actually I'm not on the same one now. When you saw that slide with all the altars, right, to actually not break free, but to make it dormant, I had to psychically tear up each image in my mind 3 times, so the sacred 3. So that was a method, and that came through another friend of mine who got it from my late husband who passed. He actually tried to help me from the other side. So when I tore these images up in my mind, ripped them up 3 times, it was like setting a huge gate free. I suddenly felt, wow, I feel totally different. I really feel different. I didn't expect it. I was just observing what would happen, but I did. And this was like, freedom, great. And I thought, yeah, I'm free now, wonderful, nothing else to do now, I'm all clear, no worries. And then I was talking to Simon, he said, no, you're not clear, it's only dormant. I went, oh, sugar. So from that, I realised there's a lot more work. Then you get targeted by the demonic, so they start sending you demonic attacks. You have to fight them with recitations. I use recitations, I've got friends involved. And they helped me, they supported me by adding to the energy and supporting me to break free. So it's like connecting consciousness, with Simon and connecting consciousness. It's bringing those consciousnesses together, increases the energy vastly. So as we connect in a positive way, it really does have an effect. And I remember one incident, I'd not done this before, but it was an exorcism, because where my husband died, I was still sleeping. And it opened a portal into, the dark area, the dark satanic sort of portal to negative energy. And there was a jinn in there. Now, we've been working on demonic to get rid of that, but there was a jinn in there. And I was doing the recitations and everything else. My friend was telling me what to do. And then I kind of saw it whizzing around the room. I'd burnt loads of sage, and I'd almost set, the sage burnt so well, the whole room was filled with smoke. And I was like looking around. He was on Zoom, and then like looking around. This jinn was flying around, and it's like, what? Why is it flying around? I was saying, and he was saying, "Did you crack a window?" And I went, "No, I didn't know you're supposed to crack a window." So, if you're fighting off a jinn, you need to crack a window to let it out. I thought, well, why can't it go just through the wall? But apparently they find that difficult. I don't know why. But I didn't know, so it's been a learning process. So everything they've done, I've been learning. So I've been learning firsthand. And then at one point, and then it sort of triggered to a point where, because the military knew I was coming out of mind control, they started to get me with the microwaving. And then my computer and the modem and cutting my cable for the internet. And there's so many different things. So, and at that point, I hadn't got rid of the other yet, so I was being got at by both. And another thing they do is sleep deprivation. I had days when I couldn't sleep, and that was really bad, because it weakened your resistance to all the other things. So that it was only because of interventions by others that I could actually sleep and get increased protection, so I could at least get some rest. Because if you go 3 days without sleep, you're at a point when you can hardly get up. Because I mean no sleep. I don't mean, I grab a bit of sleep here or a bit of sleep there. Because if they turn the electronics up to a certain point, you can't sleep. So this is something else I had to learn to counter. And this, I tried everything. But I ordered this, which is an EMF blanket. So it blocks certain signals. I sent for this the first time. It was intercepted. The parcel was put in my letterbox, empty, nicely cut open, neatly. Put in my letterbox to say, oh, by the way, we intercepted it before you got it. So, oh, great. So I'm like trying to survive and wondering what to do. So I was using Malar, emergency blankets, things like that, anything to try and block the signals that were really, because the pain is really bad. It's like, it burns your eyes. I've still got eye damage, but it burns your eyes. It burns your skin, so your skin feels like it's on fire. And pain down the side of my head. I got shot in the leg with a laser too, and they managed to get through the window to shoot me in the leg with a laser. So, so you go through all these different things, as well as like you're breathing for your lost, your husband who's died and everything else. So it's like, well, I knew if I lower my frequency, as it were, because the higher your frequency, the more positive you are, the less they can get you. But of course, their aim is to lower your frequency. And so I learned very quickly that I couldn't really lower my frequency. It was a kind of classic condition. Don't lower your frequency, you get hit more. So you learn to adapt, basically. You've got to be adaptable. So even like a few weeks, it wasn't long ago, I got 5 warnings that this was in Canada, that the satanic group had decided they were going to kidnap me. And your consequences of that is not very nice. So I had the warnings, and so I ended up going to a safe house up in the north of Canada, just before I left Canada. And on my way out that day, a car blocked me in, but I managed to talk my way out of it. And it came across that the others were telling me too, that they picked up, it was a satanic, it was a satanic guy who was a spotter. So he wasn't the group that were going to kidnap me, but I'd had the warning that night I need to be out the house. And just before this guy arrived, I just shoved everything in my suitcase, and I went to try and escape before they got there, because I had this real strong psychic warning that they're on the way, and I didn't expect them till later. But I did manage to obviously escape. I wouldn't be here today. So it was thanks to other people who gave me the safe house and everything that I'm actually here, because you're not going to survive if they get you. So I'm really grateful. But it's about like, now I've got the attitude, now I've gone through the months, of like, here today, gone today, but in a positive way. So in other words, I'm letting go of the fear of death or being targeted or being taken out, and I'm just living day to day, and I'm not going to be afraid. So I am going to talk about these things, and I'm going to be open about these things, because it's got to stop. Thank you. But thank you. Yeah. Right, I'll go into the SSP, this Mars. Now, this is a spliced-in timeline, which I'm still trying to figure out how that works, but I wasn't there too long. I wasn't like 20 and back. It was only about a year, so it wasn't a huge length of time. But I'll start off with, well, this is us, really. This is other than planet. We're all swimming around our lovely Earth goldfish bowl, including myself. And if you're lucky, you might kind of think you're dipping out of it, but like jumping out the goldfish bowl. We're all okay. We all know what's happening, and we're aware of everything that's going on the planet, how, who's controlling what, and we're free now because we understand. And we end up jumping into another goldfish bowl because we don't realise there's a lot more to it than we thought. And I've done that. I think, oh yeah, I'm free. No, I'm not. So it's still a learning process with me, but as I said, I'm in communication with various ET races now. And basically, it's a huge universe out there. There's not just us. There's like so many beings out there, you know. This is an example. Like, this is our galaxy, our wonderful local galaxy that we're in, and we're part of the solar system, you know. And here it's a rough estimate. So talk about a rough estimate or what? I mean, they're saying like there's 250 billion stars, and that's just stars, not planets. Give or take 150 billion, you know. It's not much really, is it? Like 150 billion. We're not quite sure how many, but give or take 150 billion. So chances are we're not alone, are we? So it's a foregone conclusion. So many people are now getting communication with off-world beings. This is because the Palladians, as one group, have had enough. They've had enough. That it's kind of a non-intervention rule they have, but there's too many souls being trapped on this planet, and soul trapping is against universal law. So this is giving them a roundabout excuse to get involved now, whereas they wouldn't get involved before because, you know, the rules. So the negative groups will do whatever they want, and the positive groups, well, we are played by the rules. So this is like, it puts you in the back foot, basically. And us being a young race, really, the human beings, we're a pretty young race on this planet. And there are other beings that were here before, like the Draco were here before us, and also the arachnids were here before the Draco. So the arachnids have got claim to this planet as well, and I'm fully appreciative. They tended to stay out of any situation, stay neutral, keep themselves to themselves. Now, there's a very benevolent group that communicated with me to start with, and this was due to my connections with them, and that was due to a hybrid program I was put on. And the hybrid program, they spliced in a bit of arachnid DNA into me and other genes as well, which were arachnid, reptilian, and mantid. And from there, they took then DNA from me and spliced it with the giant benevolent arachnids, which are jumping spiders, and they're precogs. So you're not going to beat them because they can understand what you're going to do before you do it. Unlike the reptilians, who can only read your mind, they're not precogs, so they can't do that. So the arachnids will beat the reptilians, just so any reptilians listening. And don't mess with me because they're on my side now, so just so they're warned. Well, I do forgive them if they behave. Now, so the arachnids are now changing sides. They know the frequency of the planet is rising. They are millions of years old as a race. They live a long time. They live thousands of years. Each arachnid lives thousands. They're not what you expect. They're not like your garden spider, you know. They're not that. They're huge. I mean, I have met one physically. I've met them psychically. I met one physically in Canada. The first night, and you're talking to a arachnophobic here, so it's been a big learning curve for me. I've had to swallow hard and go, right, I accepted any benevolent being, including the arachnids. So, with that, it settled on my chimney because I was upstairs and I could see out the window chimney. It was like 4 foot. So, right, it's outside. I can kind of cope with this. Anyway, it came in my room. It opened the door, but it phased out. They can phase in and out of between third and fourth. So it came in, not visible to me, but I knew it was there. I could sense it, and my dog started growling. The door opened, and it went on the wall. And then it touched my leg. And I didn't jump because it was kind of the most warm, sensitive touch that I'd almost ever had. It wasn't being aggressive. It was teaching me. And it connected with me, and it was teaching me their history. And they have a history of the great weavings, like the great mother arachnid weaves the energy lines on the universe, basically. That's what they believe. And it kind of makes sense to me, because who creates, they don't pretend they're source or anything. Source is above that, or God is above that. But the great arachnids, we use these energy lines throughout the universe. And if I go on to the next one here, this shows this is a NASA photograph, and these are linked galaxies. And it shows you the energy lines. Now, there's positive energy lines and negative ones. You don't want to go on the negative energy lines. They're definitely ones which will be dark lines, because you end up in the dark dimensions. But this goes on to wormholes and how you enter a wormhole, if you need to enter a wormhole. So if I go on to the next part. Right. So if I talk about portals, jump rooms, wormholes, and consciousness travel, each method is different. So we're multi-dimensional beings. We are all capable of using our consciousness to travel. Now, you're not taking your physical body in that time. You're just separating from your physical body, and you're leaving like a silver line or a silver thread back to your body so you come back. And then, so you can travel. But it's been more difficult to do this more recently because of the EMF and other mechanisms they put in place. So it's harder to travel a long distance, like to different galaxies or far off planets, because the control system on grid on this planet is so strong, it's really difficult. And when you go up to the higher dimensions, it's like your consciousness and perception, it's like a lock is taken off. You're suddenly like, great, I can think clearly, I'm not fogged in. I feel energetic. My consciousness has expanded. I feel wonderful. And then when you come back down on Earth, it's like a clamp going straight back on again. It's so heavy and dense here. And that's because of all the negativity on the planet, the negative energies, which are all over the place. They're everywhere. So it's about raising vibration. So if we can all raise our vibration, that is one of the key elements of breaking free from this planet. It is a key element. It's what we know in connecting consciousness. It's what we're endeavouring. Of course, everything's put in our way to stop us. Oh, I've got to pay the mortgage again next week, and I haven't got enough. Or, I've got this bill coming in, that bill, and it all lowers our vibration, These are all techniques to lower us. There's enough money in the world. Yeah, a certain very small minority has most of it, but nobody talks about that in mainstream. The old BBC don't go, there's only a few people that have all the money, like the Rothschilds and others, and the rest of us are trying to scrimp through the next month, thinking, God, my car broke down. How am I going to pay for the brakes this month? These sort of things. And that lowers our vibration. But the more positive vibration we have, there's something called providence kicks in, and things will come your way. I don't know how it works, but it does work. Things will kick in your way. It's a bit like me escaping the satanic group. If it wasn't for other people, I wouldn't have done it. So, I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for every day that I'm alive. So, I'm really happy about it, and I can live happy because I've let go of that, So, when I go through and I talk about the Monarch Mind Control, it's not easy for me because I'm drawing myself down a bit doing that. But people do need to know about it so they can let go of it, so they can understand and be warned about it. And then it's about breaking that cycle of all this mind control that's prevalent, as we say, not just about Monarch, it's every sort of program on the planet, from schools to transgender. That's a program. No doubt about it. It came out of nowhere. I was working in a place in Canada, and I was working with youths because, I got a degree, so I went into that field. All of a sudden, we got this notice, we got to put this up, right? Transgender, we've got to accept transgender. And I'm not against anybody's sexuality, it's not that. But the problem is this, and it's caused problems, rape as well. Because if a man or a youth says, well, actually, today, I'm going to be a woman. They are now allowed to go in the women's dormitories.
And their crime will be recorded as perpetrated by a woman, even though they don't...
Yeah, I know this happened because it happened in the home we had. And you are tied because it's like between two youths, it's really difficult to sort of prosecute and things. Now, if it was between like the person who was like a worker there and a youth, obviously you can prosecute that. But when it's between two youths, it's very, very difficult. And this is the issues that are arising from this transgender. It means it makes people more vulnerable. Of course, for the Olympics, we'll get a few men in the Olympics, and we'll say the women, and they can win all the athletes. They can win all the competitions, these sorts of things. But anyway, coming back to portals, jump rooms, wormholes, I'll go on to the next thing about that. Right, wormholes. It's kind of quantum entanglement, and as probably many of you have read maybe a bit about this, about bending time and space, but it's actually a bit more difficult than that. If you look at the drawing on the right, it's like a twisting method. So as the time and space compresses, it kind of folds in on itself and twists, a bit like the shape of the galaxy. It's all about spirals. That's how an actual, when the compression is done, that's how it works. Now, let's see what the next slide is. Do I need to? Right, so. Now, if you've got advanced craft, this is a model I made. Now, I did slight error on this one because it was months ago, and I've recalled more now. There's a slight element of the because I've been in the higher dimensional craft, and I'm also worked on the SSP craft. So the skin of a higher dimensional craft is very much a living thing. It's a living being. The whole craft is a living element. It's a being. It's not, and you connect psychically with the being. So, and I can connect with things. I can connect with animals if they want to connect with me, or trees, and I've connected with other things too. And so when you connect with a higher dimensional craft, you approach it, and then I remember touching it, and it made a really direct connection with it, and it felt like warm and ambient temperature, and it was about this colour too. There was no door in it. So a higher dimensional craft is surrounded by a quantum vacuum, which allows them to not need to use wormholes. They can reappear and disappear into any area they want to. Whereas the lower dimensional craft, they have to use wormholes to get from A to B. And when I went into the craft and I was inside, it was lit by a warm glow, and the feeling in there was like, it's like a mother's womb feeling. It was so wonderful and just such a comfortable feeling. And I didn't put the drawing up here of that, about the console that I've got a drawing. A friend of mine drew the console because he remembered that, because I've been communicating with Australian friends, and we both remember things, and he had more detail on that aspect. But I could show you that. I have got it with me, but I won't get it out now because I haven't got time. But the console is like a blue-grey console, and you'd use holographic images to sort of like show you maps of where to go and things like that. And also it had at the side what looked like gills, and that was creating the atmosphere in the craft so you wouldn't suffocate, basically. So it could do all this. It had the capabilities of creating the perfect atmosphere for you, and also creating a wonderful, warm, glowing, pulsating light. And I think the pulse as well helped relax you. It had an effect on you physically and mentally, and connection also with a living being like that, because it's higher dimensional. Because the higher dimensional beings, they don't have any negative. When you go up there, you don't have these anxieties or excessive negative emotions. They disappear. They go. And then you realise you come back down, you get hammered again, you think, oh, darn. Can I go back? You think, oh, I've got to stay. And it's like, oh, do I have to? But anyway, so that's like, I've got away from the mic again. Right, so I'll get back to the Now, the SSP craft do not have the technology to create and grow a real being craft, a higher dimensional craft. They don't have it now. They didn't have it in the past when I was in. It's just so above their capabilities. Now, when you start off, and how you open a wormhole, for a start off, you got what you known as POPs, portal opening positions. I don't know where I put that on here, actually. Let's see if I put it on this one. So you get portal opening positions, but to know where you want to go, you've got to know where you start from. So it's not like, it's a bit like a road map, but it's slightly different. So I brought this today. It's obviously a crystal ball. So when you've got a starting point, you need to know the top, the bottom. You need to know all angles of where you're starting from. So it's not just like one point, like we do in a car and a map, or these days GPS, so you probably don't realise it. A lot of people use GPS now. So this would be the starting point. So it's like, it's a sphere starting point, because you can't locate yourself unless you've got all the angles. Right, so then, to get from A to B, say I want to travel, Mars has a direct line, but if I go back to the, I don't know if I need to go. You saw earlier the map of the galaxies and the energy lines. Well, they have smaller energy lines than that. So it's like a huge web. So I might have to enter a certain point on planet Earth to open a portal on an energy line. So I have to travel there by whatever means, where it's anti-gravity engines or whatever. So I travel to that point. And then I have to have a galactic positioning system, because it's no good going down one of these lines. You end up in the middle of the sun and burning up. You're not going to live very long. So you need to know where you're going. So you may travel on one of these lines 25 light years, and you can do that instantaneously too. But then you have to go from there and then move your craft to another position to get to where you want to go, because you've got to travel down a different line to get to your final destination. And this is where this part comes in, the Vesica Pisces. Now, to open a portal, lower dimensional craft use crystals. So they use crystals and they vibrate them at certain frequencies that distorts time and space, so it opens the portal. So they get into the right position in space. Right, I'm lined up, I'm okay, because they'll use electronics to do that. And as they open, it vibrates, it twists, it creates that, opens the portal. And as you go through a portal, if you look at this, the Vesica Pisces is very sacred. And if you look at this, it's got like earth, heaven, and the mystic. Now, the mystic is very relevant to opening portals, because when you open the portal and you twist time and space together, in the center port, which is the center of the Vesica Pisces, you're in two places at once. You're in two parts of the universe or galaxy at the same time. Because as you pass through, you're passing through this side and the other side exactly the same time. And I actually approached a quantum physicist about this, and it was quantum entanglement, and he said, yeah, you can do this. And so that was to confirm everything that I'd learned and everything. And so at that point, you're in 2 points of time and space at the same time. And once you get through, obviously, then you make your way to your next point. But I mean, depending on how close a planet is, you may only need one energy line that you transverse. You might only need one. Like from Earth to Mars, you don't actually need a craft. You can use a jump room, because there are energy lines from Earth straight to Mars, because it's our nearest neighbour. And there's energy lines from Earth to the moon. But if you want to go to Saturn, or if you want to go to a planet further away, then you will need to transverse that through these energy lines. Right, these are jump rooms. Now, as I was saying, you can actually use your consciousness. You don't actually need, us as human beings, we can use our consciousness to travel. We don't actually need to go through portals or jump rooms, but of course you can't take your human body with you. You leave your human body behind. So if you want to physically travel to another location, then you have to use a jump room or portal. Or unless you're inside a higher dimensional craft, and they'll take you. So there are, I do recall different shapes. They trialed different shapes, and some of them had steps, which is, I got this under regression. I know Miles was talking about this, but I did have a problem with the bottom steps of stairs, and this was because of the trials of different types of portals. And we do have natural portals too on the planet. There's portals that may be around sacred groves of trees, or we're very close to potential portals, should we say, especially around Avebury. Stonehenge, not so much, but Avebury has a huge amount of energy there. So that you're in an ideal location here that has portals. So you may not go. Also, there can be time slips too. So, like, you may be driving along and it seems a lot longer. You think, I've been driving for ages. And you look at your clock and you think, oh, it doesn't say that I've been driving for ages. The clock stays the same, but I'm thinking, I'm sure I've been driving about an hour, and it's only saying 5 minutes. So we actually do experience these time slips, especially around here, because as I said, there's a lot around here. But in the experiments they did, they just, right, we're just going to experiment. We're going to put you through a portal. Right, what's at the other side? Well, we kind of don't know. So we'll experiment. We'll put you through this portal. Oh, we're just sending you through the dark energy portal. You don't go through the dark energy portal because the places on the other side are horrific. This planet has negative, but it's like either entering in the domain of the jinn or the demonic, right into their realm. You don't want to go there. Or other dark dimensions. So there are dark dimensions, and then there's phenomenal, wonderful dimensions that are, higher dimensions. Because I don't like to number them, because once you get above a certain amount, you kind of sense you're getting up in higher dimensions. And once you get above a certain level, there's no negativity anyway. But in the darker dimensions, there's no positivity, none. And which was kind of covered in Harry Potter with the Death Eaters. Because they were sort of like, they kind of described it, if you go to Azkaban, there's no positivity there. It's all dark. So it was like a dark dimension they were describing at that point. So they knew, or she knew, or she had an inkling about this. Whether it could have been subconscious, she might not have been fully aware of it. So that gets us on to Mars. Now, I do recall Mars, and Mars has a lower gravitation than Earth. And Earth, going back in the centuries, well, millions of years, Earth too had a lower gravitational field, hence why dinosaurs were so big. And why the animals on Mars tend to be pretty big too. It's because of the gravitational field. The indigenous life there, that is, not the ones that are living on the bases. Right, so what I recall there is we had suits. Now, the suits, you can breathe the atmosphere on Mars, but it's very much like being on the top of Mount Everest or elsewhere like that. It's very hard to breathe, but you can, so you don't have to wear a suit. But as soon as you go on any elevation, you'd need a suit to an extra oxygen supply, because it would just be too hard to breathe. But the suits, I recall, they were black, and you could have a full visor down, or depending on where you were at, because there were areas that were very dangerous that you couldn't breathe at all, so you needed the full visor down. Other areas you didn't actually need the suit, but you had the suit for protection more than anything. And the suits had an exoskeleton, but very much like an insectoid suit, because the exoskeleton was very fine. It wasn't like maybe some you've seen online now, they're big bulky things, like on Alien, when you see that huge machine that Ripley was in, the huge mechanical machine. It's not like that. They're very fine. and they give you exceptional strength. Bearing in mind as well, your gravitation is much lighter as well on Mars. So you don't feel as heavy, so you can run faster, you can move faster. It's not as much strain on your body. And you did have weapons. I remember weapons that were attached to you, so you could be pretty quick at firing at the insectoids, because, yeah, there are some on Mars. And to the right here, you see, this is one of the latest NASA suits. So lo and behold, it looks very much like the other suit, black suit, but white. And it hasn't got an exoskeleton as of yet that they're showing. But it's a full face mask as well. Right, this is one of the bases I recall. Now, I recall them being put in craters. They've been put in craters because it's easier to defend a crater. It's a natural hollow. So you can create an electromagnetic field around the crater and above the crater, so it defends it from all angles. Now, around the edge, you have weapons, automatic weapons, because you have to lower the force field to let aircraft land, and take off. At that point, some of the other creatures, they're not stupid, they know, and they may be waiting to infiltrate at that point and attack. So you need defensive mechanisms, various defensive mechanisms. And this would be only the top portion of the base. Most of it would be underground. So they'd either land, if it's a quick turnaround or something, they'd land on top of the square bit and they'd disembark and do whatever they want. Or they could go underneath and then go down a lift system to store, a bit like an aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier, there's been a few programs about that recently, about, how they store the aircraft underground with a lift system, similar sort of system, basically. So that's the force field. And there are some like greenhouse areas as well that they can grow stuff. And of course they can grow it underground as well. Right, this is, now I'm looking at, now Mars is a hostile environment because it's not fully, its environment has been mainly destroyed by past events. So it isn't quite as lush as planet Earth, but there are a lot of pockets where there are plants and vegetation, and there are forests. So these are Mars photographs here, and they are forests. Obviously, they try and explain it as something else, but they are forests. And I never remember it raining on Mars. I don't remember it raining, but you got the water just underneath the surface. So all plant and animal, like a lot of animals live underground. That's how they survived in the first place when there was cataclysm. They were the underground creatures. Now here I've got a tree I remember being on Mars. It's a very tough tree. Now the roots are very deep, so they can really draw in moisture from underground because they don't get it above ground. The trunk is kind of a very smooth trunk, and the leaves are very featherish, but they can close at night. So when it gets cold at night, they can close in like some plants can. And like the seed pods, like one seed pod is a spiral, so it spirals down, and it would be blown around in the wind, and it's got enough energy and nutrients within that one seed pod to allow it to taproot down into the water source. Obviously, they'll lose some, like any plants, but it's enough to tap far enough down so it can get a water source somewhere. But obviously, if it's an arid area, they're not going to take anyway. Now, these are more plant life. I remember like purple flowering plants on Mars, and there was vast areas of them. And also like a sedge-like grass, which was a blue-green colour, very tough sort of grass. It was very protected. And that spread, like other plants, even on Earth, by rhizomes. So what you see above ground is hardly anything. What you see below ground is a huge network of plants, the root systems and everything. It's mainly underground because that's where it gets all its nutrients from and things. So it doesn't need as much above ground. Now, I'm getting on to the native species. Now, there They'll probably publish some of these soon. They're starting to publish more and more images of Mars. Now, these are a rock that I remember from Mars, but it's a living rock. And it's a system that it has like these teeth underneath that kind of grind into the rock, and it absorbs the nutrients. So it has layers and layers of like these teeth, and it's slow, it just does it gradually. And so they called it Olympic rock, because it like really digs in. You can't like pull it up. It can move slowly, but you try and pull it up and it can't. And you don't put it on your skin. Obviously, some idiots have tried this in the past. And you can't get it off your skin. If you get it on your skin, it limpets in. And they might have to chop your hand off because they can't get it off. And a bit, I don't know if anybody's aware of it. You know the lamprey fish? You know how its teeth mechanism works? It's a similar sort of system. There's rows and rows of teeth, and it's hard to get a lamprey off if it bites you because it kind of digs in. You can't kind of remove it. It's a similar sort of thing. So, people learn from the past. You don't do it. And then I remember what they called, they were hoppers, but the jumping jacks, and they called them, they fed on like the sap from the leaves and from the sedge-like grass and other plants. The size of them, they'd probably be about that big. So they were bigger than a normal insect here. But they were friendly, not harmful to humans or anything. They were not to be worried about at all. But they were called jumping jacks because, does anybody remember the old firecrackers that would jump around if lit? So you never knew which direction they would jump, so that was their defense mechanism. So they'd like randomly jump in any other direction and then run pretty fast when they stopped jumping. That was another defense mechanism. So there is also an ecosystem, obviously, animals and plants feeding off each other. So they had giant centipedes there. So like Earth, they had centipedes, but they're much bigger. So kind of 5 foot plus. Of course, they would feed on the hoppers. And the hoppers would feed on the vegetation. Then we get the spindle. This is another creature. It's a bit like a crab. I didn't draw a mouth on it, but it's a bit like a crab. It mainly feeds on minerals and waste from the other animals. Very harmless, very, very fast. And its mechanism of defense was it'd like curl down and look like a rock. So it was a camouflage, basically. And it could run fast as well, but obviously it couldn't run as fast as some of the other creatures there. Now, this comes to the more dangerous. These are one of the most dangerous creatures. These are big. These would be about at least 20 foot, these ones. And an exothrip is a bit like an ant, and we do have thrips on Earth, but they're like this big. So, but on Mars, they're huge, and they have like a hard outer shell. And they would, again, be coloured the same as the Earth's surface. It seems to be, and they live underground, and they've got hive minds. So once one thinks of something, they all think of it. And they're extremely fast. They have a neurotoxin if you're bitten. And also, they can pretty much rip you apart very, very quickly. So these are the ones you've got to watch, because it's not just one after you, you've got a lot. And this is what the bases are defending against, basically. They're extremely vicious creatures. Now, these again are Mars photographs that have been released, or people have spotted them. Now, there are arachnids on Mars. There are spiders. The spiders on Mars you don't mess with. There's quadrants and sectors on Mars. And if they learnt the hard way, you leave those sectors alone. You leave the spiders alone. They can feed on the other creatures, so they can actually feed on the giant exothrips. So, they're tougher than them. So you don't mess with the arachnids. And they're big. But they're also intelligent. So as long as you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. So they're not a threat to the bases as long as you abide by their rules, whereas the insectoids are a threat. They're just kind of pretty nasty. So they'll get whenever they can, when they can. So, But as I was saying, we're all far more powerful than we are led to believe on this planet. We're all more multi-dimensional beings. And this is what has been kept from us. This is how we've been kept prisoners. And the Palladians are fully willing to support us, but we need to ask for support. We need to lead the way. We're kind of like the hobbits in The Lord of the Rings. You know, when we're our size, but when you look against our size to a reptilian, we're kind of a little bit smaller than a hobbit, because they're huge. So, but we are very powerful as hobbits. We have the potential of really making a difference and raising our vibration and becoming free on this planet. Yeah, there's human beings on this planet who are just as bad as the reptilians and all the others, but a lot of that is infection due to negative entities. It's not, a human race is a positive race. We are a positive race. We've just been enslaved, we've been controlled by the negative, and it's about breaking free of that negative to raise our vibration. And we will break free then. And there's a lot of hope now. Now is the best time ever. Although things like in The Lord of the Rings, sometimes things seem really dire, you know? You think, oh God, you know, this is happening, that is happening in the world. But think back, not that long ago. You were in a little village. Well, you weren't even, in Britain, you weren't even allowed to go to the next village without the Lord's permission. So we're a lot freer at the moment, but they're trying to curtail that with the 5G and the control systems. They're going to try with the Extinction Rebellion to actually constrain our ability to travel in cars. So take your transport away, get you out of the countryside, make you live in the mega cities, and then they can bombard you with whatever they want, so they make you ill and die and make a profit while they kill you. And they'll keep a 24-hour watch on you. My Siri the other day, this week, I was joking with Siri, you know, your Siri on your computer. Twice this week it says, I'm listening. I wasn't saying anything. It says, I'm listening. I thought, oh, thanks. So I started to do a bit of northern humour with it. It wasn't very appreciative of that. It says, he actually responded to me, I don't like this conversation. I just cracked up laughing at this because I thought, oh, I don't care. But I'll just finish this part. But I have got I don't know how much time we've got. Right. This is a model of a Palladian mothership. I have been up to these, and they are around the planet. And they have to tune into them. Ask them. Anybody here? Ask them. Ask them with a positive, higher vibrational intent. Where are you? If you see a flashing white light and a beam coming out, they're there. They'll actually show you where they are, because I can do that and they'll show me. Right, the Palladian ship. As I was saying, they have a crystal system. The whole ship's crystalline, but they have a crystal system that comes from the top right the way through the centre of the ship. So right through the core of the ship is all crystalline, a certain form of crystalline. And in the centre of that is a ball of plasma, and this is what runs the systems and everything. And these are like the entrances, you know, for the smaller craft to go in. And then the centre bit, you can't see very well, but there's like lots of windows. So there's viewing ports, you know, they like to view, you know, they want to look at things. And so it depends where they're stationed. Well, there's a lot around planet Earth right now, so there's an awful lot. Now, most of them are just phased out. They're either in fifth dimension or just phased out a third. But as I said, you can ask. You can ask them to show themselves. And if you've got high enough vibration, they will show themselves to you. And as I was just pointing out, the way they defend themselves is on top of that is they have a system of energy that goes from the top, like the North and South Pole. It goes all the way around. And that shields it from any other weapons or anything like that. Now, but for these, they probably need to go through portals because it's just the way they're built, because they're crystalline. Whereas the living beings, they don't need portals. These do. So these, if they want to go somewhere, they just twist round and they go that way. They wouldn't go that way. They could go like bottom first through the portals. Well, the wormholes, I should say, not the portals. Well, it's the same sort of thing, really. Now, when I went on the Palladian ship, I was walking around the deck. It was a bluey, silvery colour, a lot of it, actually very crystalline. It did have like that crystalline. The floor wasn't slippy or anything. They actually took me up there to do a bit of healing because I've been so irradiated. I probably wouldn't have survived without that because they were starting to fry my internal organs. And I just didn't think I was going to live very much longer at that point. But they did do some healing. I'm not perfect, but I'm getting there. But I thought, while I was on there, being a curious soul, I want to have a look round. So I got off the healing chair. After a bit, I felt better. And I had a look round. And I went round and I met some of the other Palladians on there. And they're very tall. They're well over 6 foot, and there were some blue Palladians too, which I've not got on this. I think I've got that on my other slides. I'm going to show you in a minute. The blue Palladians, so the blue colour, but the angelic face. You kind of know soul to soul when you meet a higher dimensional being, because it radiates this warmth to you, you know, and. So I was communicating, and what you do is you psychically communicate, which I do with my son anyway, because he's different. My son's got different chromosomes and everything. It's all been recorded. And when you communicate psychically, you can choose to communicate with the individual straight in front of you, you know, the individual Palladian, or you can choose to include anybody in your conversation. So you're not like broadcasting to everybody everything you're saying. And I remember walking around the deck, and there was this weird-looking creature that, it was like Spaghetti Junction. And I'm thinking, where's its head? It's like, has it got a head? And of course, I didn't block that bit, so it heard me. Because I was thinking it, but it heard my thoughts, and it was like, oh. But it wasn't too offended. Oh, and the Palladians, they like took me to the cafe area, which they were drinking drinks. They weren't eating food. There was like this drink mixture they were drinking, and they were laughing. They were laughing at me. I was like, oh yeah, okay. But I was laughing as well, so it was really funny because they don't take offence, but they have a lot of fun. They've got a great sense of humour. So when you see these miserable git aliens that are like, you know what I mean? The pictures of the greys. Well, I'm not surprised the greys are miserable, but you know, yeah. But you do see these pictures, and these greys are like, oh, what a bunch of miserable gits. And then, but like the Palladians are laughing, joking, stuff like that. You know, they can, they do have mouths. They can speak if they want to, but they don't use that most of the time. It's mainly psychic abilities that they use, you know, because they don't need to talk really. So. Yeah, that was just to hang it. I hang it from my life because it will glow at night sometimes, because it just kind of creates energy, and it created a really good communication. Even though I just made it out of like a light bulb and stuff, I seem to put energy in it.
They actually suck up plasma from the sun to refuel. And that model just reminded me of it. They actually let down these tentacles.
Well, actually, yeah, recharging, I would have to ask them about that. See if I should imagine they do that, but I'll have to ask them. So I'll connect with them. I've been guided to go somewhere else after today. So I'm just following their lead. They're just guiding me, and I'm doing kind of what I'm told, really. But I don't mind, because it's very positive, so I don't really care. Now, I want to go on the next one.